You probably pride yourself on having killer intuition, right? You think you can read people, you trust your gut to make those big life decisions, and honestly, when you hear a story that just intuitively makes sense, you believe it. But what if I told you that your intuition, that gut feeling you hold so dear, is actually a total mathematical disaster? What if I told you it's the exact vulnerability that manipulators, bad debaters, and fake news peddlers use to completely play you? Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are putting your intuition to the test, and we're going to fix a massive hidden bug in your mental operating system.
All right, let's just dive right into a reality check. Your gut is a mathematical disaster. In this explainer, we're going to decode a highly dangerous blind spot where a compelling, well-told story completely destroys your ability to do basic math. You might think your situation is special, but statistically, it's incredibly average. We're going to reveal exactly how your brain actively searches for the wrong information and give you the framework you need to completely bulletproof your logic against people trying to deceive you.
So let's start with part one, the problem. We call this the Lucy illusion. Okay, let me introduce you to Lucy. Back in college, she was a math major, absolutely brilliant with numbers, and she completely aced all her courses in probability and statistics. Now, based on that specific background, which of these two statements is statistically more likely to be true today? Option 1, Lucy is a portrait artist. Or option 2, Lucy is a portrait artist who also plays poker. Take a second, pick your answer right now, and lock it in.
Now, what's really wild here is the sheer scale of the illusion. When researchers present this exact scenario, up to 80% of people, and we're talking including experts and students studying statistics, they choose option 2. Their gut instinct tells them, well, Lucy was great at math, and statistics are super useful in a game like poker, so that second option just creates this narrative that makes total sense. It just feels incredibly right.
But let's pause for a second. Did you just pick option 2? Be honest. Because if you did, your mental autopilot is totally showing. Choosing option 2 as the more likely scenario is actually mathematically impossible. Seriously, let that sink in for a moment. It is an absolute, undeniable mathematical impossibility. If your brain just completely ignored the laws of probability because you liked the cool story about the poker-playing math nerd, well, you've just fallen into the trap.
Which brings us to part 2, the agitation. Let's unpack what's known as the conjunction fallacy. This brilliantly illustrates the basic logic at play here. Logically speaking, the first statement, that Lucy is just a portrait artist, is always more likely to be true simply because it's a broader, less specific version of the second statement. Think about it. Anyone who is a portrait artist and a poker player automatically belongs to the much larger, broader group of just portrait artists. But it doesn't work the other way around, right? And this brings us to an absolute ironclad rule of reality. For any possible set of events, the likelihood of A occurring by itself will always be greater than the likelihood of A and B both occurring at the exact same time. Every single time you add a new condition, a new detail, or some new requirement to a scenario, it becomes statistically less likely to happen. The more conditions there are, the lower the probability. Period. So the crucial takeaway here is understanding what just happened in your head. It's called the conjunction fallacy. Basically, it's a cognitive glitch where your lazy brain looks for a shortcut. When you're asked to make a quick decision, you naturally look for what seems plausible, what forms a great, cohesive narrative, rather than what is actually statistically probable. Adding that hyper-specific detail about Lucy playing poker gave your brain a story that really resonated with her math background. It made it feel far more believable, even as mathematically it became far less likely. And look, this isn't just some fun, quirky math puzzle. This is a massive vulnerability. Manipulators absolutely weaponize this fallacy against you every single day. Look at the things on this list. Conspiracy theories, false news stories, totally outlandish narratives. They all rely on the conjunction fallacy to seem credible. And a bad actor will literally stack highly specific, resonant details on top of each other just to trick your gut into thinking their crazy story makes perfect sense. The more complex details they add, the more plausible your gut thinks it is, even though the actual probability of the story being true crashes with every single added detail. We need to execute a total pattern interrupt right here with this one rule. A good story is not evidence. Here is the really uncomfortable truth. Your brain would much rather believe a highly specific, totally unproven, sexy lie than a broad, boring statistical truth. When someone in a debate starts weaving this crazy narrative packed with assumptions, your brain naturally wants to say, wow, yeah, that makes so much sense, but it doesn't. Every single detail they add actually makes their argument statistically weaker. All right, part 3, the solution. Enter the base rate advantage. So how do we actually stop falling for the illusion of a good story? You have to deploy what experts call the outside view. When you're analyzing a situation, your gut desperately wants to focus on the dramatic, super specific details that make everything feel completely unique. You have to override that desire. Instead, you step back, look at the big picture, and ask a very simple, kind of boring question. What typically happens in situations like this? You have to look at the broad category, not the specific drama. Let's break this down into a tactical, step-by-step framework you can start using today. Step 1. Separate plausibility from probability. Remember that plausibility just measures how good the storyteller is, probability measures reality. Decouple how a story feels from its cold, hard statistical facts. Step 2. Deploy that outside view. Just ignore the juicy details for a second and ask what typically happens. And finally, Step 3. Anchor to the base rate. If someone claims a crazy exception to the rule is happening, you anchor your logic to the underlying historical data and reference classes. Basically, expect the average until it's mathematically proven otherwise.
This brings us to what is essentially the ultimate strategic cheat code for critical thinking. True intelligence isn't about getting deep into the weeds and analyzing every single tiny detail of an opponent's complex, convoluted lie. It's about looking at their massive, highly detailed story, identifying the base mathematical probability of all those distinct events happening together, and being able to just calmly say, statistically, you are almost certainly wrong. It mathematically dismisses the opponent without you ever having to get tangled up in their web.
A genuine master of information never lets a well-told story hijack their logic, because as long as you rely on your gut to navigate complex arguments, you are always going to be a victim of the conjunction fallacy, forever mistaking a good narrative for the objective truth. By adopting the outside view and anchoring your logic to base rates, you strip manipulative arguers of their absolute greatest weapon. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to take away from this explainer. The next time you're faced with a brilliant, compelling narrative, will you let it hijack your critical reasoning, or will you step back, take a breath, and always check the math? Keep that in mind, and seriously, never let your gut do the math for you.